Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Fintech Ki Baat Dil Se. Today we have with us Mr. Amit Boni, founder and CEO of Ensuredit, an Insure-tech based company based out of Gurgaon. Hi Mr. Amit, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure having you here.
Hey, thanks very much. Appreciate you having me on the podcast. Yeah.
Great. So, as we all know, I think Ensuredit has been, deeply entrenched into the Insurtech ecosystem, and you have a lot of Insurtech partners. But before we deep dive into that and start talking about Insure-tech as a piece, I briefly wanted to cover your background. I mean, since you have been in the telecom industry in the past, you have been heading Motorola in India and have expanded their business. So, wanted to understand how is your journey been like being at the pinnacle of the corporate career, then stepping out of that and moving forward into the entrepreneurial journey, and basically taking that forward, building something in a completely different sector. So, would want to understand a bit more about your personal journey from a corporate veteran to an entrepreneur. What inspired that, and specifically, what I'm curious about is why the shift in sector as well.
Okay. Being in a corporate setup is a very interesting one. I mean, what you're looking out for is growing with the company and hopefully outpacing the company's growth in your own career itself. And I was very lucky to be very very young, essentially when I became Motorola's India CEO.
Mm-hmm.
So this is about almost a decade back now. And I stayed at Motorola till about 2017, 18.
Mm-hmm.
We built out an obviously and very, very incredible business at that time. We started ground up, pretty much with a zero team to begin with. In a way, I got that whole thing together going. We disrupted the distribution model of hardware business in India, and then ended up basically building out $1 billion in revenue in like about 17, 18 months time.
Wow.
But what was, I mean, as much as it was remarkable, I remember it for very different reasons. I don't remember it so much for, that we ended up building up $1 billion in revenues in such a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
We used to run that $1 billion business with just about 14, 15 people in the country. And to me, that was remarkable. I had one sales guy, a couple of marketing folks, stuff like that. And we used to do more business than the next 2-3 guys put together. So to a large extent, honestly, it was very entrepreneurial in a way even there, right? I remember first time when we were launching a product out there, and we give these samples out, hardware samples out to media, and they came to us, packets separate, phones separate, batteries separate, and me and a couple of guys actually we sat down on our office floor and put those things together in boxes and kind of ship them out to folks the next day. So it was very very entrepreneurial out there as well to that extent.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I had spent about my 6 years out there, one of the key things in my head was when you achieve something interesting, my question to myself was, is it a one-time thing? Can I repeat this? Was it just fluke? Did I get purely lucky? And I do believe that God's grace and luck plays its own part in you being at the right place at the right time to make something magnificently large. But I just wanted to see a certain degree of repeatability to it. So I went ahead and I joined a very very relatively a very young startup at that time, but which was still a growth stage startup in hardware and AI IoT. And out there, we ended up increasing the revenue, I think, by about from 6x in about 15 odd months in that venture. And so yeah, I mean, a large corporate and well done, check. A small growth stage startup, well done and check. But the question was still that, is it that you can only do it when you know that not everything really depends upon you?
Right.
And that was the trigger for me to start thinking about entrepreneurship. And luckily, one of my dearest friends, and who's a school friend, was leading BFSI practice for PricewaterhouseCoopers out of New York, and he and we used to talk very often. Had a couple of beers one day, got talking about कुछ करते हैं इकट्ठे, कुछ इंटरेस्टिंग सा क्या हो सकता है. And the genesis of Ensuredit really came from there. And to be honest, I think second part of your question was why this industry, considering that I came from a hardware mobility side. The conversation between Rohit and me over those phone calls was we had three key prerequisites to saying what industry or what problem should we go and solve. One, that it got to be very, very large.
Okay.
I didn't want it to be a small niche industry. I didn't want to do, you know, for the lack of a great example, I didn't want to do chatbots in medical only, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I wanted the industry to be very, very large. And the good thing is, insurance today, despite the fact that we're really getting just started, is about $120 billion industry.
Right.
It's bigger than all the hardware in India. It's bigger than all the consumer hardware in India. It's bigger than pharma in India. Uh, it's bigger than smartphones and pharma put together.
Wow.
And we're still just getting started in insurance.
Mm-hmm.
The second was that it's got to be a place where there is a deep rooted problem that can have very large scale impact.
Mm-hmm.
And India is massively underinsured, and insurance, in my opinion, is something that's very, very meaningful to people. But obviously, for the lack of multiple reasons, people in our country don't have access to insurance. And third was that it's got to have a strong technology play in India to make that difference.
Mm-hmm.
And combining these three things, I think there was still an underlying fact that it has got to appeal to both what Rohit and I wanted to do. In a sense that I didn't want to. For example, I would never go into a cement manufacturing business, right?
Mm-hmm.
मुझे नहीं लगता कि उसमें it needs an Amit Boni to create a mass impact. So to that extent, it needed to be a passion project for both me and Rohit, in which we think we can meaningfully impact our fellow countrymen, right? So it had to be a passion project. So yeah, I mean that's really my journey from being from a corporate bit to entrepreneurship.
Awesome. I think this is super interesting. And what I can link it to with many other conversations that I've had is basically that, it always is impact driven and it's always is passion driven. I mean, choosing of the problem statement that you solve for, it almost always is passion driven first and impact driven next. It's never कि यार इसमें पैसा बनेगा, कि इसमें market size बहुत ज़्यादा बड़ा है. Those could be ancillaries, but from whatever entrepreneurs that I have talked to, they have a certain passion about the industry, and it's almost always more about कि I'm able to serve the countrymen in some or the other way by creating a better solution. So I'm glad to see that that still lining up with thought process that you also are following.
Yeah.
When speaking of insurance as an industry, I mean, from what I've heard, it's somewhere around 3% penetrated in India, right?
Yep.
Almost 97% of India is still underpenetrated. So, quickly want to understand what Ensuredit is doing essentially to enable, penetration on a larger scale when you're talking about a tech platform. So I remember us discussing about creating API-based products as well as SaaS products. So would love to hear a bit more in detail about that as well.
Awesome. So before I get there, I'll address the misnomer of penetration in India.
Mm-hmm.
So when we say the penetration rates in India are about 3.5%, it does not mean that 96-97% people in India don't have insurance.
Okay.
That is a definition that is true for every other industry. And even when I heard this first time, I was like, wow, that's incredible. But unfortunately, in insurance industry, that's not the definition for it. Penetration rates in insurance are seen as insurance market size as a percentage of the country's GDP.
Okay.
Right. So, and typically what we'll call penetration is a per capita usage. But for some, I don't know why they did this in insurance industry, but in globally insurance industry, penetration rates are seen as in size of the industry as a percentage of the GDP.
Okay.
So that metric, you're absolutely correct, is about 3.5%.
Would you go on? Sorry for interrupting you, but I'm just curious. How do you go on interpreting that kind of a metric then?
Isn't it? And that is why when I heard this first time as well, because my interpretation was exactly the same. कि 97% हमारे देशवासियों के पास इंश्योरेंस नहीं है, because
Right.
that's what it said. 3% penetration है, मतलब 97 के पास नहीं है.
Hmm.
And that's it. I don't know कि ये लॉजिक किसने पहली बार लगाया कि ये डेफिनेशन होना चाहिए, लेकिन आज की में यही इसका डेफिनेशन है. But see, where it is an interesting metric as well. I have to kind of, I do think there is a nuance to it.
Hmm.
That is because we see insurance generally as a layman, we see insurance as health insurance करना है, गाड़ी का insurance करना है, life insurance करना है. But there are sectors in insurance which are much larger than this, right? आपका commercial insurance, आपका fire, आपका marine, आपका there's so many categories of it, right? जो उनके अपने market sizes are very large and they're very meaningful to the economy of a nation. So if you were to, for example, at some level start segregating it as a per capita number, and then see, because for example, if you are insuring every factory in India against fire or against flooding or inventory against flooding, I mean, you can't do a per capita really on that. That's a much more difficult metric, right?
True.
So to that extent, the penetration metric that's currently used, it subsumes the larger idea of how large is the industry, and therefore it starts looking at per capita coverage almost as a subsumed metric within this larger metric of insurance penetration.
Interesting. Yeah. So ideally then, if we were to say what we actually initially assumed, right, कि 97% के पास नहीं है, that could be the way you would measure essentially a health insurance or probably a life insurance separately, but not insurance industry as a whole.
Correct. So I mean, and honestly, different people throw different numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think that nobody really knows कि India का this per capita number है क्या.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. See, because let's say on an average retail insurance we buy, right? And when I say retail, I mean health, for example, right? We buy health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
But companies also provide health insurance coverage. Right? And government is also providing health insurance coverages to some extent, or life insurance coverages. Similarly, if you look at vehicles, a lot of people, insure their vehicles, but there is a ton of vehicles that is uninsured in India, which are on road every day but are not insured, especially among two-wheelers.
Right.
So really, I mean, अगर एक बार insurance हुआ है फिर renewal नहीं हुआ, what is that real metric? There is, in my opinion, it's a range bound number. But I think in still, if you looked at health, probably I think there is a reasonable number. There's probably like 20% maybe even more that are actually covered under health.
Oh wow. That puts it into a completely different perspective then.
Yeah. So that's why I said, I mean, I think that penetration metric as a percentage of GDP is an interesting subsuming metric as in general. Sorry. So just to kind of circle back to your other number, I think I have two questions. You're asking what are we doing to help increase the insurance penetration?
Right.
So take a step back and say, if somebody had to buy an insurance, any product for that matter, what's important for us to buy a product? One, that product needs to exist, which insurance does. Two, it needs to be available for you to buy from somewhere. कहीं ना कहीं आपको दुकान पे जाओ, e-commerce से खरीदो, कहीं ना कहीं पर होना चाहिए आपके पास ऑप्शन मुझे खरीदना. And three, it should be, let's say, it should fit your pocket, right? It's something that you can actually spend money and buy. So there are all three problems fundamentally in India which have resulted in lower insurance penetration rate. But I think the largest probably of them is that insurance, even if you want to buy, there is not a point of sale where you can buy it from. Especially if you look at tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 markets, it's not there. I mean, I've seen a couple of metrics and those may be slightly dated, but it generally assumes that about 98% of the distribution of life insurance available in India actually is among urban and urban minus centers.
Okay.
बाकी पूरे देश में 2% है. And if you were to look at general insurance, which is your motor insurance and your health insurance, then this number is 90 and 10.
Okay. So
right? So
90% is insured in urban areas and 10% in urban minors and those areas.
no, I'm saying that just the access to buying insurance by itself.
Mm-hmm.
That access by itself is actually 98% is limited to urban minus centers,
Okay.
right? And perhaps purchase numbers and buy numbers are probably going to be very similar, considering that these numbers are so skewed.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. So the odds that if you had distribution available in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 markets, that you will see more people buying insurance is very, very high. So then the question comes, why is distribution not available out there if people are willing to buy? Some distribution hai kyun nahi? Now, that is where the product by itself and the pricing of that product also starts coming into picture.
Right.
One is that as you go into tier 2, 3s and so on and so forth, your price point, for those products may actually, come down,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, if the price point is coming down, uh, insurance companies, they also need to make some kind of money going into tier 2, tier 3, right? At
Definitely.
the best, what insurance companies can do is say we break even.
Mm-hmm.
But the cost of setting up distribution or cost of distribution expansion is so high that if with the conventional distribution models you start going into tier 2, tier 3 cities, the unit economics on every sale starts becoming progressively worse. So every time you sell a product, you basically lose money. So
Okay.
then there is really no interest for all of these guys to really go out there and start selling them. So I think the first thing first is, can we increase the distribution availability throughout the country at probably 1/10 the current cost of distribution?
Mm-hmm.
That is the first thing first that we are enabling.
Mm-hmm.
We are making sure that we provide a system that is available completely digitally over phone or on a browser in the remotest parts of the world, uh, and is connected on the supply side with X number of insurance companies, so that anyone who wants to buy can actually go and buy. Now, we do it in B2C interfaces, but we also do it in a B2B2C interfaces as well.
Understood.
The second thing is when we have, so currently we work with about 34 different insurance companies who we have integrated onto our platform. So we are increasing the choice of insurance companies, but also choice of products that are available to an agent, to a broking intermediary, or then therefore to an end consumer as well. But more importantly, what that increased choice does, it starts giving you different pricing widths as well, coverage widths as well. Right? So right from 50 रुपए के एक पर्सनल एक्सीडेंट प्रोडक्ट से लेके एक 20, 30, 40, 50,000 रुपए का प्रीमियम जिसका एक टर्म लाइफ प्रोडक्ट होगा, we have everything available. What our platform also does is it helps manage for all of our partners the entire back office in one go. So उनको Salesforce management के लिए, revenue reconciliations के लिए, commission reconciliations के लिए, they don't need to have more people.
This is for the demand side, right? I mean, this is for the supply side.
This is for the supply side.
Okay.
Correct. Not for the manufacturing, but supply side in terms of the channel by itself. So let's say you are a broking company or a bank or an authorized seller, right? For them, so if he or she wanted to set up an office somewhere, that is brick and mortar, it takes a lot of cost, then it takes cost to manage it. And that's where already a bad business model starts becoming worse.
Right.
So we help that. But by doing this, we are helping all the insurance companies significantly increase the number of distribution partners throughout the country that they can work with. So for consumers, the choice in terms of availability of a product, the width of the product, the coverage, the price points, as well as the actual availability of point of sale from where they can buy it, that increases manifold. And then for insurance manufacturers, it gives them a much broader distribution width without really spending any money.
Understood. So from what I understand, when you look at this specific segment, insurance as a segment specifically, when you go down to urban minus tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, ideally there are two problems that crop up, right? One is essentially that the products are not tailored for that segment from a price perspective, as well as the way they are structured by the manufacturers as the insurance companies. And secondly, the distribution network is not, it's not easy to scale that network up. So when you talk about these two pieces, right, these two obstacles or these two hurdles in basically creating a deeper penetration,
Hmm.
What are the major innovations that you've seen? Let's start with first from the distribution side, because I have also seen a lot of innovations, or at least attempts at innovation in that sector. And then if you could also throw some light on what kind of product innovations that you've seen, specifically from insurance companies to basically enable a wider distribution for these segments, because unit economics at current situations are not viable.
I think that's a fantastic question here. Distribution. I think there is a relatively lot more innovation
Hmm.
in terms of business models that we have seen that you will see more, right?
Right.
So, so for example, a sachet product,
Hmm.
in my opinion, was an interesting way, though it's a product construct, but I think it's a more interesting distribution construct.
Right.
Why? Because you can, there are more people who are willing to kind of get accesses to some of those products without going through very large routine cycles of buying a larger insurance. It
Hmm.
is also your ability to then ask people to kind of come or get agencies to come and say these for some of these products you really don't need to go through a lot of regulatory rigmarole because most of the sachet products tend to be group insurance products
Right.
and those are a lot more simpler, a lot more easier to understand, have a broader construct, don't have an individual specific underwriting that really goes out there.
Hmm.
Similarly, if you look at embedded insurance, I think embedded insurance is going to go through the absolutely through the roof. It's a huge playground that's coming up. And if you look at embedded insurance working with neo distributors, I think it's brilliant, right? So imagine a large e-commerce company which
Hmm.
already has trusted relationships with millions of its customers.
Right.
Now, if you're buying furniture, if you're buying an electronic gadget, and you want the insurance for that, it can be a part of the SKU itself,
Right.
right? You don't have to start fending for insurance separately, right? If
Hmm.
you're tomorrow buying, and I think this construct will start going into other categories as well. If you're, for example, buying a house, you could have an insurance today with it. Today, I mean, with loans, banks give you term insurance products along with them in any case, right?
Right. Right.
As most of the consumers say, chipka dete hain, right? But
Hmm.
those exist out there. That's bundling of insurance happening out there. But I think as more relevant products start coming around it, I think new distributors will become absolutely important in taking a lot of insurance to the masses. So you have retail networks, you have e-commerce companies, you have health companies, you have lending companies. A lot of these companies are going to bundle those products, embed them within the SKUs that they sell or the services that they sell, and distribute it a lot more widely. And then it starts covering various kinds of risks that come within them, right? So imagine you are a health tech company,
Hmm.
and let's say you're selling a BP monitor,
Right.
right? I should be in a position to kind of embed a small health product along with it, right?
Definitely.
Uh, I may actually even insure the product itself. I mean, that becomes a possibility as well.
Hmm.
Uh, I think also you will see this construct becoming very, very mainstream as 5G intervention starts happening. I think as it starts ensuring quality of service and consistent flow of data coming in, I
Hmm.
think you will see a lot more of these kind of innovations coming into play. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I think digitization by itself and embedded insurance, in my opinion, are two major factors. The limitation, or the only limitation with the embedded insurance today is that it is smaller ticket items and sachet size products or micro insurance products. But I see the path in which you will have regular products that can be embedded within larger financial constructs.
Definitely. So I was actually thinking that when you were saying, see, I've seen a lot of embedded insurance, right? You see it in Uber, Ola, you see in Zomato, you see when you book your flights, and a
Mhm.
lot of other places, right? I've even seen cases where savings account is bundled along with health insurance in some banks in rural areas just to increase the penetration.
Mhm.
But so I see a major challenge when you see situations like farm insurance, crop insurance, and all of that, and that essentially that industry entirely is waiting for a huge tech intervention to come in so that a farm level underwriting can be done wherein IoT can intervene to provide that granular data so that the insurance can be underwritten, right? Because major issue right now is it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I understand specifically for farm insurance is that land PCs that are covered are essentially covered at a district level, right? In this district level, we are covering sugar farmers and something like that. But a
Yeah.
certain part of district could be affected by a weather anomaly, while the other part is not, and that is when it becomes very difficult to settle those claims and identify who has actually been affected and all of that.
Hmm.
So, just wanted to understand what is your view on that, and how do you see that industry being included in a proper systematic, what do you say, underwriting ecosystem for insurance?
I think I have seen green shoots of what you were saying happening.
Mm-hmm.
We ourselves are looking at certain areas in which tech can do intervention on farm side, right?
Mm-hmm.
One is that your event-based insurance or parametric insurance, as we call it, I think has a very interesting use cases on the farm side.
Right.
So I think it in a lot of, and will parametric insurance cover all the risk categories within farm? No, it won't. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it will cover enough and ensure that there is a specific payout that starts going out.
Right.
That will come into play. The second is I've seen green shoots around geospatial imaging
Mm-hmm.
that some companies are working on to actually go almost down to an acre level
Okay.
uh, and say we'll have the, for example, images coming in from ISRO.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick it up at that level, feed it into your AI algorithm, and really come out with saying that, okay, I believe that this is the kind of stuff that's going in, and this is the kind of, and you obviously have access to weather patterns and so on and so forth categories. But using AI machine learning superimposed on top of geospatial imaging is, I think, one of the steps that's getting done on the farm side. We're already, and one of the things that we at Insure-tech do, we know we can't do everything by ourselves. So we're creating an ecosystem of partners that we work with. And there is a partner that with whom actually we have initiated some conversations of this nature to see how tech interventions around this can be done and how we can create product constructs that then obviously can be done with insurance companies who can share to provide a lot more meaningful asset evaluations as well as asset risk coverages to in the
Mm-hmm.
power sector.
Understood. Understood. So something that really was kind of, what do you say, making me really curious over here is for farm insurance. I've seen applications of a sensor-based ecosystem, right? As you said, one is the geospatial thing. The second piece is where they essentially put sensor at a farm level to identify the soil nutritionness and all of that.
Mhm.
But the problem that I see is, are the traditional insurance manufacturers willing to accept this data and willing to underwrite based on that?
It's my take is that yes, they will be. I think and insurer will be more than happy to kind of underwrite, but everyone needs to underwrite with a certain degree of confidence.
Right, right.
So to that extent, the data needs to be rich enough.
Hmm.
Otherwise it's a circular loop, right? I want to write, but I don't have access to data that will help me underwrite. Oh, I still want to underwrite, but I still don't have that data. So it probably is going to take a little bit of a time. My If I had to kind of place a bet, I will still go down the path of geospatial imaging plus AI ML as the
Hmm.
way to kind of go down that path. Because the moment you say sensors, and considering that I come from a hardware sensors background, um, the scale of that starts becoming difficult, right?
Hmm.
The cost of that starts becoming very, very difficult.
Right.
A geospatial play with AI ML can actually be done as a B2B SaaS product, for example.
Okay.
Right? I
So.
mean,
Hmm.
it can be a company like us which says, hey, I'm going to do an AI ML solution or with geospatial IQ, and I will provide you that data set. I'll
Hmm.
provide you, for example, a data set of these 50, 80, 100 contiguous acres
Right.
or whatever you want, right? You want to do मुझे सिर्फ चने की फसल वाली खेत जो है वो इंश्योर करने हैं, मुझे नहीं करना गेहूं. I can get you that. So I mean, not that we are doing that currently, but I'm saying that it can be that solution play as well. I
Understood.
think sensor-led play will happen. It definitely will happen, but I think it's a slightly more long gestation period solution.
Understood. Definitely. So I have actually come across a few companies who are doing the geospatial play right now. But
Mhm.
the problem again is that the data is not as enriched as you would want it to be for someone to actually take the risk and insure on it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I personally see it as a still a couple of years away before someone actually gets the data enriched enough to take an insurance bet on that. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, see, by the end of the day, people talk about AI, ML very casually, very fleetingly. Uh, the heart and soul of anything AI, ML is data. The more it is there, the better you start getting at it. So I 100% agree with you. I think if the data acquisition pipelines are clearer, become better, who knows? Maybe it's something that needs to be done as a consortium with the government, right?
Right.
Say, hey, help us, right? Help us get data. Our satellites keep on sweeping our country, a million times a day.
Mm,
Maybe that's something that government needs to support a consortium and say, okay, we're going to provide that data. Somebody build it out so that there can be better products that come out. So I mean, so to that extent, I agree with you. But I mean, yeah, data acquisition pipelines need to be clear before solutions of nature can come into play.
definitely. Completely agree with you on that. Now, taking a step back over here from farm insurance specifically to insurance industry as a whole, how do you see this going forward? Let's say from a perspective of distribution versus product building, right? So, do you see a scenario evolving wherein insurance product manufacturers, essentially the traditional insurance companies, becoming an insurance as a service platform wherein they are just building the products and being the regulated entities who are license holders, and innovation on distribution coming in from a perspective of smaller fintechs and smaller distribution networks who are sitting on top of them and creating that next level of outreach to the tier 3 tier 4 areas, wherein so that unit economics might actually work out for those smaller players versus the bigger insurance industries in those scenarios. So do you see this scenario happening, and what would you, I mean, if you were to speculate on a couple of models, and what would those couple of models be wherein you see them actually reaching out more? So, for example, I recently had a conversation with someone who's running something akin to a BC network across country with more than 1 million merchants, and they are super hyped about you know satirizing everything from OTT to insurance to everything, and trying to distribute that. The major problem in that industry, I mean, as everyone knows, is that the stickiness of the merchants is not there, right? Where जहाँ दूसरा ज़्यादा commission मिल गया वो वहाँ पे जाके बेचेगा. So in those kind of scenarios, sometimes the unit economics are not even feasible for these people to keep on having feet on street to keep on having these merchants. But ultimately, you only have a 10% of active merchant base, right?
Hmm.
So what do you see as a sustainable model that could actually enable these kind of penetrations?
I think there is going to be some kind of a mix coming into play for two reasons. One is that across financial services, and this is my belief, not necessarily a fact. Uh, Insurance is probably one of the more complicated financial products. It's not as simple as a savings account. It's not credit card, right? There is too many ifs and buts, too many conditions, too many promises, and too many recourses, which are a part of an insurance product. It needs lot more explaining if you want to sell a product right to the consumer. And that is why if you see globally, insurance is still an intermediated business rather than a D2C business.
True.
And it is irrespective of the size of the economy, whether it's a third world country, a growing economy, or a developed economy. It's an intermediate business globally. So when it comes down to what I generally call mainstream products, like an health insurance today for 8,000-10,000 rupees, or a medical insurance for a life, I don't think neo distribution is going to be a much help. Will they partake in it? Yes, but I think a lot of that will still stay D2C models, right? And that is where it starts putting limitation on them. But yes, there is going to be a glut of sachet-sized products, specific niche products, and they may not even be sachet-sized, right? But
Right.
very niche risk coverages that people will need. So, for example, cyber insurance today.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, if you are buying a cyber insurance, honestly, I don't think you need somebody to come up to you and sell that. अगर आपको cyber ही चाहिए तो फिर आप online ही खरीदोगे.
Right.
So, and that is, I think, it's very niche products, micro insurance products, sachet size products, for which new distribution will really be the channel.
Mm-hmm.
And then large ticket size items, more complex products. I think you still need intermediation and people function out there to really go and sell. So my take is, currently it's practically like 1% to 99
Mm-hmm.
in terms of intermediation. I think in midterm you will see it going to probably like on a lower side maybe a 595, but on a higher side I it will still be like 90% plus will still be intermediated with them.
Definitely, I think I really agree with you on this. Given the fact that, from what I have observed, insurance for someone like me also has to be a push product, and even then, for someone who's into the financial industry over, I mean, from at least let's say last half a decade or so, I still required a certain amount of handholding and
Yep.
explanation, certain jargons and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't foresee someone at least from a tier 3, tier 4 area being completely literate enough to actually go and do a direct purchase specifically for term plans or even health insurances.
Yeah. No, I mean, and the classical example without naming is that some of the largest D2C players in India in last 6, 8, 9 months we would have observed are trying to do omni-channel now.
Right, right.
Right? Those guys who built amazing businesses doing just D2C are going omni-channel and saying, we understand we are going to need people feet on street, we are going to need touch points. So I think that by itself is a great validation of an intermediated model. That's going to be a primary model.
Definitely. And one of the recent trends that I've seen in Insure-tech industry, well, not that recent, it's still a couple of years old, is that basically it has taken it on. So when I started my journey in Fintech back in 2018, early Insure-techs were all about direct to consumer selling, and we will do a robo advisory model on insurance, and you won't have to have anyone in between. I saw those startups after a couple of years pivoting down to an agent-led model, wherein they are onboarding insurance brokers and then basically providing recommendations through them. But ultimately, a human touchpoint has to be there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and basically, what I
Absolutely.
feel is that is going to be something that will stick around for at least next 5 years, until unless our AI becomes so good enough with at least with NLP and NLG, natural language generation as well, that it can actually understand what people are asking it in one act and answer that probably in a very correct manner. And I think a lot of regulations will also have to go in that.
No, I hear you, and I think intervention of AI ML in term and in our terms we call it a policy deconstruction algorithm,
Mm-hmm.
because we work on some of these things, right? We try to see what are the ways and means of simplifying our policy idea
Right.
for the agent as well as for the consumer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, see, it it it's only going to become more complex in a way, right?
Right.
Because as you start looking at um, you know event based and in journey and looking at behavioral aspects of what needs to be covered, more areas that will get covered. Um, I think insurance products by itself will get componentized in terms of simplicity, but the overall idea of what all needs to be covered will become a lot more complex. Yeah.
Definitely.
So AIML will be a great way of explaining it. But यार देखो कमर्शियल तो AIML करेगा नहीं. कमर्शियल तो अभी भी इंश्योरेंस जो सेक्टर है वो अभी भी कोई ना कोई सेल्स वाला ही जाएगा, प्रोडक्ट वाला ही जाएगा. हाँ, एंड कंज्यूमर साइड पे, एंड आई थिंक इट कैन स्टार्ट पिकिंग अप फ्रॉम लोअर टिकट आइटम्स गोइंग अप टू ऑन द हायर टिकट साइड.
Definitely. So, taking a step back here from insurance as an industry back to entrepreneurship as an endeavor, uh, one final question from my end to basically on behalf of all the viewers that are looking at right now and jumping into the entrepreneurship endeavor. So, majority of my audience is also someone who is looking to jump into entrepreneurship. Is what I've discovered when I actually had a one-on-one interaction with a few of the audiences. I realized that मुझे चालू करना है. They're like, yeah, I'm in a corporate job. I've been like in 10 years. I'm a VP. I'm an AVP, and now I want to jump into that. But I'm not able to take that leap of faith, or I'm still kind of stuck or paralyzed in that decision dilemma. Right? What would be your two words of advice for these kind of people who are stuck there?
Yeah, there is an advice that I can give which is very eclectic and something which is very very pragmatic. I have anyone who cares to ask me, I tell them both the things. I think one is you should get into entrepreneurship if you are super convinced that this is the love of your life.
Okay.
मेरे को ये करना है क्योंकि मुझे लगता है ये मैसिव एक प्रॉब्लम है जो बहुत इम्पैक्टफुल है. इससे great stuff can come out of it. And I think I am as good as anyone who can attempt to do it, right? So you really got to feel something about that. The second is, and by the way, if the first happens, you probably don't get stuck that often. जो stuck वाला idea है ना, वो उन लोगों के लिए आता है which start doing these calculations कि यार हाँ है भी, करने का मूड भी है, कुछ सैड है, टॉपिकल आइडिया है, आजकल तो सारे स्टार्टअप कर रहे हैं, तो यार फिर मैं क्यों नहीं, अरे लेकिन नौकरी छूट जाएगी, तनख्वाह कैसे आएगी, when that starts coming up. Right. My tip to them is, and if you are sitting on the edge of it, saying कि जाऊं कि नहीं जाऊं, my calculus is simple. If you think you have about a year and a half worth money to run your life the way you are running today. अगर 1.5 साल का तनख्वाह पड़ा हुआ है बैंक अकाउंट में और जा सकते हो, नौकरी छोड़ सकते हो, तो भाई जंप कर लो.
Got it.
क्योंकि अगर 1.5 साल में you will get a sense कि अब और कितना लाइफ में फाइट मारना है, क्या करना है, ये मेरे लिए है कि नहीं है. आपको एक स्टार्टअप को एटलीस्ट आपका लाइफ का 3 साल देना है ये फिगर आउट करने के लिए चलेगी कि नहीं चलेगी.
राइट.
सो कम से कम खुद को उसका आधा टाइम दो ये पता करने के लिए कि तुम्हारे लिए एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप है भी कि नहीं.
समझ गया.
तो ये है सर मेरा इक्लेक्टिक और क्या कहते हैं प्रैग्मेटिक दोनों साइड का.
नहीं बिल्कुल काफी यूजफुल है. आई मीन like before I was I'm currently working at Science, so before I was working here, in my previous organization met over 2,000 plus startup founders, and I've seen everyone jumping into it because they were driven by a cause. Yeah. It was never about the money, it was never about the valuation, it was a problem that they were passionate for, and that's why they were where they were, right? Some of them failed, but they did not fail because of lack of commitment, they failed because of some or the other reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was always the drive for or the passion for the idea that drove them, and I think you also put that really beautifully कि अगर आपको उस चीज को आपको लगता है कि you are able to create an impact, and if you're passionate about the idea, you jump into it, and if you just want to give it a try, whatever the metric that you said कि 1.5 साल का salary होगा, jump करके देख लो if it makes sense for you. But yeah, I think that's super useful, and I think a lot of the audience will also find it very useful.
Yeah, I mean, क्या कहते हैं, I know कि आज की डेट में, and this is probably because in our country, and it's remarkable how many young entrepreneurs we have in the country. So by that extent, I'm a relatively older entrepreneur now. But it's remarkable. I mean, how passionate people are, and I think ये topicality है थोड़ी और थोड़ा मतलब कुछ. अब जब अखबारों में पढ़ते रहते हो कि 1 बिलियन की कंपनी बना दी, 10 बिलियन की बना दी, 400 मिलियन उठा लिए, तो सबको लगता है कि दिस अ कन्वर्सेशन अबाउट वैल्यूएशन. बट आई मीन I have coincidentally we were 7 friends in engineering college. 6 of us turned entrepreneurs, and none of them is really chasing money in the venture for themselves. Everyone is saying मतलब हाँ प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करेंगे, कुछ बनाएंगे, मतलब यार हो जाएगा, मतलब अगर पैसा बनना होगा तो बन जाएगा, उसको कोई रोकने नहीं वाला. बट वो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करनी है और वो बहुत डीप रूटेडली उसमें घुस के प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करनी है. तो हाँ, प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करने के लिए एंटरप्रेन्योर बनो, बाकी साथ साथ में चलता रहता है.
Perfect. I think this was a great takeaway for everyone who's listening and is on the edge of their seat to take the leap of the faith. You have it. that problem solve करनी है तो entrepreneur बनो, पैसे तो यार corporate में से ही बना लोगे तुम.
That's true.
All right. I think we are also like just done with our time as well. And I think this has been a really one of the really better conversations that I've had, and has been really insightful. So thank you so much, here, Amit. It was a pleasure having you here, and got to learn a lot from you.
Awesome, yeah. It's always a pleasure talking to folks. And if I can share something that I learned in my career, why not? So it was great talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, yeah.